может вернуться к мирной жизни и продолжать трудиться во благо германской армии и немецкого народа. Сейчас вы можете возвращаться в свои дома, к своим семьям и к своим гражданским профессиям. И продолжаете трудиться во благо Третьего Рейха. Все понятно? Понятно.
This raw footage is part of a sensational collection from a German army film crew that was produced in September of 1941, after the Battle of Kiev. The material, being processed for use in Deutsche Wochenschau newsreels, had, at this stage in the production cycle, not yet received the recorded voiceover, and more importantly, had not yet been censored. That first scene, for example, would never be shown to the general public, and you can probably imagine why. Using footage from this unique collection, we'll get an uncensored look at occupied Kiev and its population. We'll then witness the staggering moment that Soviet radio bombs were triggered, which caused destruction on an enormous scale, in an otherwise relatively undamaged city. At the end of this video, we'll see part of the newsreel that contains some of this raw footage, so stick around. It's worth it. The city of Kiev was occupied by German forces on September 19th of 1941. Contrary to the supplement to Directive 34, in which Hitler ordered the city to be razed to the ground, since there had been no fighting within the city limits, it had been spared. To some, this might have seemed an indication that the war against the Soviet Union might progress in a less brutal fashion. If the civil population was willing to trade the autocratic rule of the Soviets to that of the new German occupiers, then a relatively peaceful transition might be possible. Either way, those in the German High Command had no intention of creating an independent Ukrainian state. Here we see the German authorities providing papers to the Ukrainian families which released the Soviet soldiers from the army and gave them the supposed right to return to their former agricultural activities. This soldier, standing next to his family, is removing his polyanki, the traditional Russian soldiers' foot wraps, which had been in use since the 17th century. He happily trades in the Soviet uniform for civilian clothing. Such authentic audio recordings are rare. Notice how pleased the newly released civilians seem. This scene, filmed in Kiev probably around September 22nd, shows German-produced newspapers being passed out to the civilian population. Although filmed clearly for its propaganda value, there seems to be authentic interest in learning about the progression of the war from a non-Soviet source. These urban scenes portray an uncanny normality. To what extent had the population acclimated to the new normal? On September 24th, the first of the Soviet F-10 radio bombs exploded in central Kiev, with more attacks following up until the 28th. It's believed that these were detonated by stay-behind Soviet engineer units that sent out the activation signal on the designated radio frequency. The Germans tended to occupy large office buildings recently vacated by the Soviets, knowing that they were, to a large extent, in better condition, offered space, and sometimes even had communications lines that were left intact. Using this knowledge, booby-trapped locations offered the opportunity to kill high-value targets, much as a sniper does on the battlefield. The Soviets would even sometimes leave behind poorly camouflaged, more simplistic booby traps in the area which, once deactivated, gave the occupier a false sense of security. An F-10 bomb that was detonated on September 24th managed to hit the rear headquarters of the Wehrmacht Army Group South, killing many officers, including the artillery commander of the 29th Army Corps. Appropriately, in the Lenin Museum, stashes of such F-10 radio bomb detonators and thousands of kilos of explosives was found. Within a few days, the Germans had developed countermeasures, which included using an electronic listening device, which could localize the radio bomb's mechanical clock component. Broadcasting a blocking radio wave at a discovered F-10 frequency, or simply digging to find the radio antenna. But in Kiev, with the combination of the explosions and the resulting fires, the damage had already been done. In response, the occupiers organized the largest reprisal massacre to date in the ravines of nearby Babi Yar. The downward spiral of increasing violence was accelerating. Now, here's part of the Wochenschau newsreel that shows a few clips from this raw material.
Auf dem jenseitigen Ufer des Dnepr die Zitadelle der Stadt. Deutsche Truppen rücken in Kiew ein. Die Sowjets hatten in diese Häuser gewaltige Minenladungen eingebaut, die sie ohne Rücksicht auf die Zivilbevölkerung durch Fernzündung in die Luft sprengten. Zur Bekämpfung der Brände und zur Sicherung der Durchmarschstraßen sind Sonderkommandos eingesetzt. Das Leben unserer Soldaten darf durch das Zerstörungswerk der Bolschewiken nicht gefährdet werden.
Use the QR code to get to our Patreon page and see our different levels of support, to get access to exclusive footage that can't be shown here. Open a free account on our website, military1945.com. If you like this kind of material, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thanks for watching.